Notice how when the moon comes up, darkness starts to overshadow the light, right? And then it gets darker and darker until it disappears. And then as it comes out, it starts to move away. You will see that wedding ring, the diamond, the engagement ring, right? It's just a sign. Now when you look at this through a NASA telescope, which I'll show here in a second, you see darkness being pushed away by this little sliver of light that keeps getting bigger and bigger. And what this looks like is something that happened before. Because 2,000 years ago, there was a stone moved away from a tomb, presenting the wedding ring, showing the light. So our bridegroom can present the wedding ring. Right? There's your sign of Jonah. Any questions?
Turn in your Bibles to Matthew chapter 22. An invitation to participate in the kingdom. Because that's really what this parable is all about. It's an invitation to you to participate in the plan that God has for you. The kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who arranged a marriage for his son and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding. And they were not willing to come. Again, he sent out other servants saying, "Tell those who are invited, see, I've prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding." But they made light of it and went their ways. One to his own farm, another to his business, and the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed them. But when the king heard about it, he was furious. And he sent out his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then he said to his servants, "The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Therefore, go into the highways, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding." So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all whom they found, both bad and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man there who did not have on a wedding garment. So he said to him, "Friend, how did you come here without a wedding garment?" And he was speechless. Then the king said to the servants, "Bind him hand and foot, take him away, cast him into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen." Many were called. But look what it says in verse 4. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, note this, "Tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding. Come to the wedding." The first one asked the guests to attend. The second invitation would say, everything is ready. All is prepared. All of the arrangements have been made. It's time to participate. The king has made an enormous and an abundant provision. When it says, "See, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and fatted cattle." In that culture and society, the vast majority of people would never get to dine like this. Can you imagine what they're basically saying is, we have all of the beef fajitas you can eat. You'll have beef burritos, you'll have beef tacos, you'll have beef enchiladas, but it goes way beyond that. In this culture and society, it would be like Kobe beef. It would be like beef that's $100 for every 3 ounces. That if you put that one taste in your mouth, it just melts in your mouth. This would have been like, now I don't want to stretch the analogy too far. Now again, this king responds with mercy. He once again responds with grace. He once again responds with patience, and in an incredible thing, in something that would never ever really happen in the ancient world, in the face of disrespect and disgrace, the invitation is extended again. And again, you have to understand something. You're missing the point if you fail to see what this parable is saying. The implication is the invitation is extended and accepted, and now the people refuse to come. The invitation stands. If ever there was a time to put aside doubt, unbelief, differences, it's the day of the king's son's wedding. There was another busy merchant, a businessman. The implication is that they live in the city. They're involved in commerce. They're involved in trade. These are the people who are working, laboring, making a living, generating a profit. There's no time in their way of thinking. There's no need to acknowledge the king or his son. The king is a distraction. The king is a disturbance. The king is a hindrance. The king and his son are a threat to their personal interests, their business interests, their financial interests. And if the king and his son are a threat to their wealth and their security and their business, it's going to generate hostility. John MacArthur said, the indifferent guests in the parable represent people who are preoccupied with daily living and personal pursuits, and lots of people find lots of reasons to ignore God, to ignore Jesus, to ignore the gospel. It makes no sense to try and overthrow the king and his heir. But that's exactly what they do. Look what it says. But they made light of it and went their ways. They mocked. They scorned. It says, and the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed them. The people who rejected the invitation gave themselves not only permission not to show up to the wedding, but to persecute God's servants. Made light translates, again, an interesting word in the original language. It is a word that means to care little or at all. It also could be translated to be careless. The word is, for the Greek scholar, what's called the aorist participle. The translation then would have to read, they were making light of it, but in other words, it isn't just simply they offhandedly made light of it. The idea is that this is something thoughtful, deliberate. It is definite. They've made the definite decision. They've made the definite decision not to attend the great marriage feast. This is negligence. This is carelessness. This is the person who says, why in the world would I want to believe this? Why in the world would I even believe that there is a God who might be king? Why in the world would I concede that there's something or someone supernatural? Why in the world would I want to lean on religious superstition or psychological crutches. This is every single person who hears the story of Jesus, his love for the world, his sacrifice for sin, and they say, I don't care. I think that this is all nonsense. This is all garbage. So I want you to just think for a moment, why aren't the invited guests worthy? You should pay careful attention to the two sins that invited the judgment from the king. The first was the ridicule and the abuse of God's servants. Note, God destroyed those murderers, verse 7. The people who persecuted the messengers. And number two, those who rejected the invitation.